Today I'm going to tackle a project that if you watch this and learn from this, you'll be able to do just about anything electrically in a car. And so what I'm wanting to do, if you've seen some of my other videos, you know I have a dash cam in the car, and basically it's triggered to come on when you turn the key on the ignition. So there's a little glitch in that system in that when you're starting the car, there's not power to the accessory. So that brief moment when the key is turned all the way, there's no power there. But anyway, when it kicks back to accessory, the camera comes on. The reason I say there's a glitch is I think sometimes because there's that brief, as the key is passing accessory and going to start, there's a little burst of power that goes through the line. Sometimes it causes the camera to lock up, so it's not recording, so I have to check it. The other problem with that is if you stop your vehicle, you probably don't want to leave your key in the accessory, but there's going to be times where you want to record and not have the key in the ignition. So what I wanted to do was wire in a manual bypass that I can flip a switch and it'll send power to the camera, and that way I can leave it recording while the car's parked or whatever. And so what that's going to require is a relay, and you've hopefully watched my video on relays, how they work. I printed out the page that I created just to kind of use to help me out as far as what happens on these. And so my basic thing to do here is this is going to be the output to the camera, and it's going to switch between these two outputs. And for my purposes, this is going to be hooked up, the red wire here is going to be hooked up to the accessory power in the vehicle. And so when I turn the key on, power will go there, go to the camera. Then I'm going to wire in, and you see here I've got some switches here, an option to basically take the battery power. And again, if you've seen some of my other videos, the Crown Vics have several fused power options underneath the glove box area, kind of in the kick panel side. So I don't have to worry about fusing because those are already fused. Like I said, I'll have the accessory power from there on one of them. I will have battery power from another one, and it's going to bypass this for now. It's going to go up into the back of one of these switches, and so when the switch is off, nothing will go through. When the switch is turned on, that battery power will come down, and it's going to be wired. These two are going to be connected, so it's going to be wired to here, and basically the black here will be grounded. And so when I flip that switch, power will go on here. That'll trigger the relay, and it'll turn the red wire basically off, and now the battery power will go to the blue wire. And the blue wire is going to be hooked up to this cigarette lighter plug. The camera will be plugged into the cigarette lighter plug. This will be a semi-permanent installation under the dash. And then I'll run the camera wire up, through the dash, through the pillars underneath the headliner, and have the wire come out right by the rear view mirror where the camera's going to be mounted. So pick these up on Amazon. These are inexpensive little cigarette lighter plugs, and basically you hook up your hot to the middle post and your ground to these outside posts, and then run your wires back through there and connect it. So in my case, the blue is going to come up through here and be connected to there. I'm going to solder that on there. The other thing I was thinking about doing, I don't know if you have seen my other video, I have a little plastic box like this on my dashboard. I basically covered up the holes where they had it was the police microphone mounted on the dash. There was just holes there. Thinking about putting this box in there with the 4 switches. That would give me I have basically a and this doesn't cancel my brake lights, so don't freak out, but it cancels the trigger that goes to my parking sensors for the front brakes. So if you remember that video I was saying, if it's raining really bad, sometimes you get a lot of false alarms there, and so instead of having that thing constantly telling me that I'm about to hit something when I'm just driving down the road, I have a cancel that basically tells the system that I'm not hitting the brakes even if I am. Then I was wanting to have a override switch to turn on the front driving lights or auxiliary lights. Then I'd have the switch here to turn on the camera, and I'd have room for at least one more switch. I might even be able to double decker these or stagger these in a way. Yeah, it looks like I could. This box is big enough I could probably get at least 3 more switches in there. So it's a nicer box, it's deeper, so the switches will have plenty of room for the wires. And these switches are just basically 2-pole switches, so you have something going in and something going out. There's no like light or anything like that. The ones that have the 3, typically they're looking for a hot and a ground coming in, and that turns on the light. And typically those output the hot, and I don't recall now if you flip-flop those and have the hot going into the ground and the ground going into the hot, if they output the ground and the light still works, or if that just shorts them out. So the nice thing about these is, like I said, you can have a ground coming in and a ground going out, or you can have a hot coming in and a hot coming out. These switches don't care, so they're nice, and like I said, they're real sleek, not too deep. Some switches I've seen are real thick, and that creates a problem as far as location for mounting points. And then obviously there are also switches that, you know, have multiple points, so that you can have an up position, a down position, connecting all kinds of different wires. But for our purposes here, we're just needing basically on and off, so these are a good, inexpensive option for that. And like I said, before I drill any holes in this box, I need to make sure that I either do like 3 across and 3 across, or 4 across and 4 across. Whatever I'm going to do, I want them to look as factory as possible rather than just start drilling holes. But for now, we're going to start with the wiring. Like I said, the output to the cigarette lighter plug that's going to be powering the camera, we're going to put the blue wire here. And I bent this tip up a little bit. I generally like to try to get as many of these through the hole as possible, rather than just having it kind of contact it. And that way it's more of a permanent attachment. Like I said, before you do this, make sure you put that on there, or you're not going to be able to put that on at all, and you're going to have to unsolder and start over. Don't have to worry about that with the ground, because I'm just going to put a black wire that runs through there. It's not connected to this piece. Alright, so that is on there. I'll put a little flux to kind of clean up where my fingers were touching, and also to make this go a lot smoother. So I'm going to tin the soldering iron because it hasn't been tinned today. And then we don't want to have this on here too long because we don't want it to melt whatever solder connections are on the inside. So we're going to try to get this soldered on here quickly. Hopefully that connected. Now, because that's going to be a hot wire and there's going to be ground in the vicinity there, just as an extra precaution, I'm going to go ahead and put a little heat shrink over that so that it's less likely to ever short out. to make this wire basically the same length as doing that. And my reason is because the grounds can be mutual. There's no problem with tying this into the same ground spot. So I'm going to give it just enough to basically reach there. There's two possible options here. One is just to go ahead and ground that, and I think that either side is okay. Like, I don't think you have to have it grounded on both, but for me, I generally like to have it on both, just because if it's in here like this, there's going to be double the connection for the ground, and you may even want to run it this direction. I'm going to leave it insulated here, so that's not going to, it's like it's not going to run across the hot there, but have that come through there like that basically, and then go out, and that way if one of the grounds fails at some point, then you still have a secondary ground working there. So the way to do that, we're going to basically eyeball that with my finger there. We're going to start stripping from that point. And we're going to pull that out until it's, and you get a lot more resistance obviously when you're trying to strip back that much. But we're going to try to pull that all the way to the end here. And so you see it, unfortunately it does do a little bit of damage to the wire, but now I have two access points here, and then I'll strip this end off again because it's looking very ugly here right now. So this is not something that you always want to do, but if you are needing basically a double solder point, that's how I did it. So it'll still be insulated, and then I'll be able to solder on there, and then run this wire out so that it can mate up with that one. So again, clean it with the flex. And you gotta be careful because, like I said, I broke some of the strands here, and they will poke you real painfully. Alright, so that's attached. And then this should just push back through. And if I haven't melted anything, it'll thread back on there. So like I said, those will attach together and go to a ground point, and then the rest of the wiring happens in the car. So before we go to the vehicle to do any further connections, just to help myself out and so I'm not having to question what goes where, I'm connecting the yellow and the white and the two black wires here, and I'm going to go ahead and solder those. The reason I'm doing that is, and like I said in my relay video, a lot of times you do have multiple connections, and that's okay. So because the hot wire coming in will both trigger the relay and be the power source when we're connecting the hot, those two can be connected. It's amazing how when you're soldering, it goes from not hot enough to all of a sudden the whole thing just melts perfectly. If you don't have one of these and you're doing soldering, you definitely need it's called a helping hand. Basically it'll hold the wire for you that you're wanting to solder. that way it's held up. You had the second wire that you were soldering there, you use that one. You got a magnifying glass to help you to see if you need to. You see how much quicker that one went, because I had resistance to hold it against, so it heated up faster.